Now, yesterday, Parliament's National Assembly elected chairpersons of the different committees, including the portfolio committees, public accounts committees, internal committees and select committees. Party representatives who will serve on the Judicial Service Commission were also appointed, and they include impeached Judge Dr. John Hlophe from the Umkhonto weSizwe Party, Julius Malema from the EFF and Advocate Glynnis Breytenbach from the DA. So to talk more about some of the functions, the roles of Parliament's committees, we joined virtually by Professor Siphamandla Zondi. Prof, thanks so much for your time. Welcome to Morning Live.
Good morning, Sakina, and good morning to the viewers as well.
Prof, let's just start with, Parliament's oversight role, because this has been a contentious issue for the longest time, for as long as we've had this democracy, given that previously the ANC, as the ruling party, had a majority, and as such, many said that these oversight committees didn't serve the functions they were established for effectively, because the ANC was able to essentially bulldoze its way through by just using its majority to get things done. So your thoughts on this government of national unity, the 7th administration, and how things are likely to change, if at all?
Oh, yes, it is true that this, what the voters have now done have signaled a need for change or consolidation or strengthening in our parliamentary democracy as well. Since now they have this mixture of parties that are forming part of a coalition called the GNU, and parties that have different perspective on a number of things, taking up positions in portfolio committees where the actual work happened. And then you have this consolidating opposition with the MKP and EFF now drawn a little closer to each other. It seems to me that we've come to an end with the idea of a ruling party and a single leading opposition. It has become a little bit murky now, which then means every actor is now being pressured to rethink how they conduct their business. The ANC cannot act completely like a ruling party anymore. It has to adjust how it works. It has to accommodate others. It has to see how its positions test this coalition they have built. The DA has to now rethink its identity. It's been a leading opposition for the longest time. It's almost an automatic position it has, and that's how it acted yesterday as well in Parliament. It now has to rethink it and remember that whatever it does, it also tries to manage this marriage, political marriage that it has. And on the other side, the EFF has signals that it's changing its behavior from disruptions to now making argument, finding clever ways to intervene, and all that. The MKP just arrived at baptism of fire. It is the leading opposition now. It has to learn to work with others so that it opposes collectively rather than individualistically, and therefore it has to up its ability to make arguments as it tried to do yesterday. Looked like a very interesting parliament in terms of plenaries, but also in terms of portfolio committees. It's going to be very interesting because, Sakina, that's where arguments are won or lost. Now it's going to show whether you sent your best people in Parliament, whether they can argue their cases in the Water and Sanitation Portfolio Committee and defend your position from being diluted by others. That is what is going to determine. You can no longer, for the ANC, be very casual about it, knowing that you will win things through the vote in the end. Now you have to make sure that you have ability to argue in all of those, 32 portfolio committees. You have to be able to argue your position strongly.
So, Prof Zondi, when it comes to the actual accountability of the cabinet, let's talk to that, because this has been one of the weaknesses that we've seen through Parliament over the years. The ministers come before Parliament, they come before these committees and they are held to account, or at least they are supposed to be held to account. And very often that, once again, has not been done to a satisfactory level, whereby there has been instances where ministers have been allowed to get away with things they shouldn't. So again, during this 7th administration, are we likely to see an improvement in that regard? And what would be the driving force behind that?
Yes, we'll have to see. There are two big tests, I think. You are right on this. One is in cases where the chair of the portfolio committee is from the ANC and the minister and a deputy minister are from the ANC, such as in the health sector, for example. The former deputy minister of health is now the chair of the portfolio committee of health, for example. And then the former minister of health is now minister of health again. And then we have a deputy. And now the three of them come from the ANC NEC. And what has undermined this separation of power in the past was the decorum between these members of the ANC NEC. That then limits the ability of a more junior member who is now in a portfolio committee from holding to account their senior comrade who is a minister. And that has actually undermined our game quite a lot. But now at the current conditions, they know they have to up their game. How they up their game is what we're going to have to watch and see. Then the second scenario is in the cases where the chair of a portfolio committee is from one party and the minister is from another party. If you say, so for example, you look at the public administration, we have a member of the DA there chairing the portfolio committee, and the minister is from the IFP. And that may naturally enable the committee to be more independent and more robust and more critical in the interest of the people. That is much easier. Whether then the members of the portfolio committee surrender that ability to be critical and then choose decorum is something that they'll have to make choices about, and they may suffer the consequences of it because they may diminish their ability to demonstrate their ability to do work and do it strongly. So there's a lot of tests that we're now going to have to watch very carefully how these portfolio committees act to hold the ministers to account and how the ministers respond to this. And lastly, the leader of government business is now the deputy president again. How he manages this relationship will tell us whether we are moving one step up and we're becoming more effective in the business of oversight and running government.
Professor, now just moving to the JSC and the members of parliament that would serve on that. 6 civil society organizations we saw, including Judges Matter, the Helen Suzman Foundation, Council for the Advancement of the South African Constitution, KSEC, among others, objected to Dr. John Hlophe's nomination to serve on the Judicial Service Commission. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, that's politics, a very interesting area of politics. One is legality, and the other is legitimacy. Legality is easily resolved on the basis of the rules and the laws and regulations. And that matter would have been easily resolved on that basis. And it actually resolved itself on that basis, on the basis that there is no law, there are no rules that preclude Dr. John Hlophe from being nominated into the Judicial Services Commission. Then the matter then shifts from there to the matter of legitimacy. Now, in the matter of legitimacy, there are no rules, there are no specifics it's a bit subjective. It depends on how you feel and how you stand, your ideological outlook, your own biases, and all of that. That is an area where you actually resolve on the basis of arguments, on the basis of discussion and dialogue, and on the basis of reaching some kind of consensus. How it was resolved yesterday is that the parties put their different positions. The speaker allowed them a moment to make their declarations. They made very strong declarations. And the majority of parties chose not to object chose not to follow the DA's objection on the nomination and election of Dr. John Hlophe, on the basis that they did not place as much value on what issues the DA was raising regarding the ethics on John Hlophe and all of those kind of things, as they did on his ability to contribute in the JSC. These are political calculations. None of them is automatically correct. None of them is automatically incorrect. It's politics. You have to argue your views, argue your points, and in the end, you reach some form of consensus. Now, some people tell us that that creates ethical dilemma for the parliament and government. But it's not very convincing that this will be until we see how former Judge John Hlophe conducts himself in that Judicial Service Commission. But anyway, there are checks and balances. There is a whole lot of people in there, 3 advocates from different perspectives. We have about 4 women. You have about 2 young people, and there's a lot of balance in it that we should not overemphasize the power of one person or other. That seems to me there are people who fear John Hlophe. There are also people who hate him long before this thing, and that has been brought into this. There are also people who are non-committal about it, who would want to judge him on his behavior. And we'll have to leave it at that until Parliament draws up rules that would exclude people like him from this on some constitutional basis.
Which will be very interesting if we ever get to that point. But of course, just a quick final one, Professor Zondi. So we've spoken about these committees, and there is, of course, a lot more to talk to. But what sort of power exactly do these committees wield?
Perhaps you mean the portfolio committees?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. The portfolio committees have under the Constitution, have a lot of power to hold the executive to account and ensure that executive power is used constitutionally and is used for the good of the country, and that people do exactly what they have promised to do. An activist parliament would then put measures in place to ask tough questions of these executives, and to generate data, do research, and force them to act on mistakes, act on diversions, on deviations from budgets and from approved plans, and all of that. They become the eyes of the people in many ways, because in our system it's supposed to be that the voters did not surrender their power to government, but the voters ceded their power to government so that they are able to control the behavior of government at every point and able to signal you are going in the wrong direction. But you can't have all the people do that, and the portfolio committees are there to say, no, but we've decided on a universal health access, but you still have these regulations that limit people's ability to access certain elements of private health. Now we want you to move in that direction. So the portfolio committee kind of conditions the behavior of the executive and the bureaucracy. When those who are in the portfolio committee fully understand what they are doing, and they use the capacity they already have in the form of research personnel that they have in every portfolio committee, and the relationship they can have with NGOs, with research institutions, with universities out there, to make sure that they really do hold the executive to account. And I hope they take their job seriously, because a lot is at stake here. This election was a significant election, and people cannot wait longer for basic things to be done.
Well, Professor Zondi, thank you so much for helping us navigate this morning. Professor Siphamandla Zondi, Professor of Politics and International Relations at the University of Johannesburg, giving us some analysis on the role of the different parliamentary committees and, of course, the appointment of Dr. John Hlophe to the Judicial Service Commission after numerous objections.